A lot of players disappointed week 1, and some might come to mind for you right away when I say that. And then there were guys who had great performances, but they just aren't sustainable. These are the types of players you want to sell high on and trade away to your league mates as soon as possible. And here are 12 players who fit this description that you want to get rid of before week 2. Let's begin with the Houston Texans running back Damien Pierce, who, look, I haven't been high on him at all for most of the offseason, and it got worse in week 1 for him. This offseason, there was a lot of belief that he could be a 3-down back and earn the 3rd down passing game role. We saw a little glimpse of this in the preseason, but boy, oh boy, was this not the case week 1. As you can see here from Fantasy Life, our official data partner, the snap counts for week 1. Yeah, Damien Pierce saw 49%, but that's not good. That's not a workhorse role. And 2 other running backs, not just Devin Singletary, were involved. Mike Boone, the veteran, played 31% of the snaps, and Singletary saw 21% of the snaps. And more importantly, Mike Boone was the passing down back. He played 55% of the 2-minute drill snaps and 67% of the 3rd down snaps. So the translation here is this is a nasty 3-headed backfield where Damien Pierce only saw early down work, which he split with Devin Singletary. And the crappy part is you probably spent the 5th or a 6th round pick on Pierce in your draft, and based on what we just saw week 1, he's like a 9th, 10th, maybe even like 11th round value based on that role. And to make matters worse, the Texans offensive line is brutal. 2 dudes are already on IR and 3 guys are banged up and missed week 1. And this was evident because Damien Pierce had just 11 carries for 38 yards. He was really inefficient. Houston's going to be underdogs in most, if not all, their games, meaning that Mike Boone's going to be on the field a lot as a passing down back and Pierce won't be on the field. And this report came out last week from Roto World Football. It said the Texans are going to go with a platoon of running backs, 2, maybe 3 or 4, and nobody really took it seriously, and we saw that week 1. It was a 3-headed backfield. So try and sell Damien Pierce and this next stud. And don't get me wrong, Derrick Henry is a stud, but he is a sell candidate because did you see what happened week 1? As the Fantasy Life utilization report points out, it was not Derrick Henry, believe it or not, leading this backfield in snaps. It was the rookie Tajay Spears. The 3rd round pick saw 56% of the snaps. Now, Henry still earned 17 opportunities, but this is worrisome because Spears was explosive in the preseason and they clearly want to get him involved. And check this out. The Titans had a top 10 neutral pass rate week 1. And what this means was that they were throwing more in close games. This is completely different than what they did in past years. And because they were throwing more in close games, they changed their offense week 1 at least, and maybe for the rest of the year, Spears was on the field more. More specifically, Spears led the team with 20 routes run amongst the running backs, as you can see here, and it was Derrick Henry who only saw 9 routes run. That's why he was leaving the field. So odds are Henry's still going to see 15 plus touches per game, but now there's elevated risk that if the Titans are trailing by 7 or more points, Spears can cut into that workload. And this is far from the expectation you had when you drafted him in round 2 as a guy who's averaged 24 carries or touches the last 4 years. Basically, I'd try and be selling Derrick Henry right now for another running back who struggled in week 1 but had an elite role like Josh Jacobs. So there's a couple of running backs to trade away. Let's go to a veteran receiver. And I want to discuss Keenan Allen, who actually had a productive week 1, but we got to dive more into this. Allen had 9 targets and a team-high 29% target share week 1. But a lot of this production is somewhat skewed because Mike Williams had a head injury. It was a concussion. He came back later in the game, but he missed the majority of this game and the bulk of the game in the 2nd and 3rd and early 4th quarter. But that's not the main issue why I think Keenan Allen is a sell candidate. There's a much bigger issue here. And for that big issue, we'll credit Hayden Winks here for his overall neutral pass rate, so how often a team is passing in close games. And let's scroll to the bottom of this. The Chargers in week 1 in close games passed at the lowest rate, meaning that they were throwing the ball a ton under new offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. And as you can see in the Fantasy Life utilization report right here, Austin Eckler and Josh Kelly each saw 16 rush attempts. So they combined for 32 rush attempts and over 200 rushing yards. This was a completely different offense than last year. Because as you can see last year, in close games, the Chargers ranked 4th in pass rate. Only the Bengals, Chiefs, and Bills were higher than them according to Fantasy Life's data. So despite playing in the highest scoring game on the week, without Mike Williams for most of it, Keenan Allen scored just 14 points. And a reminder, Allen is now 31 years old, and last year he ranked 99th in his ability to beat man coverage and get open. This only gets worse with more age. So try and sell Allen off of this 14-point performance before things get worse. And if you're finding this helpful, make sure you hit the subscribe button. It helps me out, but it allows you to see all the future content to help you when you leave. Now, the next sell candidate is going to be Khalil Herbert, who, look, a lot of hype was going Khalil Herbert's way this offseason. We were a part of that until week 3 of the preseason. More on that in a second. And in week 1, we have to break down this data. Khalil Herbert only saw 36% of the snaps. It was actually the rookie Roschon Johnson with the most at 37%. But in the first half of this game, before it got a little bit out of hand, Herbert saw 55% of the snaps. Now, a lot of people want to say, oh, all of Roschon Johnson's snaps were in garbage time. Herbert will be fine. This is not the case. Johnson saw a lot of second half usage, not just like the final drive of the game. What actually happened was the Bears were down multiple scores. Roschon started to see more time because he's the better pass catching back and pass protector, hence why he had a team high 17 routes run amongst the running backs and a team high across all positions, tied with Darnell Mooney, 7 targets. Now, according to Fantasy Life's data, we we also saw D'Onta Foreman in this game see 30% of the snaps and 19% of the rush attempts. Between his targets and his carries, he actually had 8 opportunities in this game. And he wasn't just involved in garbage time like I'm seeing a lot of people say. He was involved in the first quarter. And of course, there's the fact that there's still Justin Fields there, who in this game was the team's leading rusher, 9 carries, 59 yards. He had a fumble, but obviously he is going to be a factor in this backfield. So maybe not even a 3-headed backfield now, but a 4-headed backfield based on week 1's usage. And after week 1, it's pretty clear that the Chicago team and Justin Fields have not improved as much as maybe fans of Chicago have wanted them to, which means it might be a long season, trailing a lot, meaning more Roschon Johnson on the field. And now don't get me wrong, I do think Khalil Herbert is still probably going to push towards 50% of the snaps in most games when the games stay close, and he continues to be efficient. Between his rushing yards and receiving yards, he averaged over 5 yards per touch yet again, which is basically what he's done his entire career. But the potential for this backfield to be split 3 to 4 ways when you factor in Justin Fields is a concern. Try and sell him off this 11-point performance. Now, another running back I'm concerned about is Isaiah Pacheco, because look, I just think that he was a trap all off season. Basically, once we saw Jerick McKinnon re-sign, and then we saw that week 1 as well. In week 1, it actually got worse than the usage last year. Look, Isaiah Pacheco in week 1, he played 47% of the snaps, but McKinnon was still there, operating as like the passing down back, playing 31% of the snaps, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire saw more usage than people thought. Last year, he was banged up a lot, healthy in this game, actually started this game and saw 23% of the snaps, and more importantly, 35% of the rush attempts. That's a large chunk. And we know Jerick McKinnon's role isn't to run the ball. He had 0 carries in this game, but look at this on Fantasy Life. The LDD, that's the long down and distance, McKinnon had 90% of those snaps. So that's basically like 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 10 plus. 90%. So this was not Pacheco's role at all. And here's the thing, Pacheco is likely to never earn 3rd down work. He ranked 140th in running back pass protection last season. There's no way a guy like that is going to get put next to Patrick Mahomes, and the Chiefs re-signed McKinnon, who's a much better pass catcher. Now, it also doesn't help Pacheco that this same utilization chart we looked at earlier from Hayden Winks, if we scroll in here, Kansas City is a top 10 from week 1 neutral pass rate team, which makes sense. When the game is close, they're passing, but even when they're ahead by a lot, they're passing. The team just doesn't run the ball all that much. If they're not running the ball a lot, that means less overall opportunities for Pacheco. And in the games where they do run the ball a lot more, Clyde Edwards-Helaire might even see some more usage, because if they're up by 15 plus, why not just give him some touches? Now back to the wide receivers, and Jacoby Myers is somebody you want to sell ASAP. Now look, this guy had a dominant week 1. Myers was the wide receiver 4. Yes, a top 5 wide receiver on the entire week, putting up 29 fantasy points, 9 catches on 10 targets. The 10 targets were a team high, more than Davante Adams, and he found the end zone twice. And we can look at the PFF snap counts right here from week 1. Adams 52 snaps, Myers 47, but look at this. No wide receivers after that saw significant usage. Hunter Renfrow just 13. The reason for that, if we scroll right here, it was the tight ends with 31 and 29. They were running a lot of 2 tight end sets, meaning that Jacoby Myers is going to have a good role. If they're only using 2 receivers, he should earn targets. But the problem is week 1 was a clear outlier, because it's unlikely Davante Adams is held to 66 yards in most games, and Josh Jacobs only put up 48 rushing yards. And it's also unlikely Jacoby Myers is going to average 1 to 2 touchdowns a game, especially in this offense, because the Raiders were a bottom 10 neutral passing team in week 1, meaning they chose to run the ball much more when the game was close rather than pass. Now, Myers did get hurt week 1. They're saying that it's a concussion. We'll see if he ends up missing a week. We'll track that throughout the week, but right now is the time to sell him off this top 5 performance. And now this next guy, I think you can sell high on him, but if you want to keep him on your team, that's fine, but there's an opportunity here. And it's Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers. Look, he's probably the best player on the entire Packers offense right now, and he showed this week 1, because he just continues to be insanely efficient. He was the running back 3 on the week. Only Eckler and Christian McCaffrey were better, because he put up nearly 27 points on just 11 touches. He had 127 yards and 2 touchdowns. But this has always been the case with Aaron Jones. He's extremely efficient. He can get it done on low touches, and he's going to have these big boom weeks. However, you can't expect 11.5 yards per touch and 2 touchdowns every single week. I'd rather trade him for a more stable piece like Josh Jacobs while you can, because overall, Aaron Jones' week 1 role wasn't any different. A.J. Dillon, 48% of the snaps, Jones 47%. Now, Jones did leave in the 4th quarter, but so did A.J. Dillon. He got taken off the field. That's why Patrick Taylor played 12% of the snaps when this was a blowout. This was basically a clean split. And now the overall opportunities in this game were close as well. You had A.J. Dillon with 13 rush attempts and 3 targets, 16. And then you had Aaron Jones with 9 rush attempts and 4 targets, 13. Now, it was a 13-13 even split before Aaron Jones left the game. Overall, though, still a split. There wasn't any change to his role. He was just insanely efficient. Look, if you have Jones on your team and you want to keep him because of this great performance, I completely understand that. But there is a window right now to go and get like a Josh Jacobs, who has a top 5 elite usage role in the league after a down week. Now, as I mentioned, Jones did leave the game with a hamstring, but after the game, he said he didn't pull it. He should be good to go moving forward. Now, I got to ask you a question. Do you want to win your fantasy league? If you're watching this video, odds are you do. Well, the Fantasy Blueprint's going to help you do just that, because every day of the week, I'm sending you a tool that's going to help you win your league. Look at this. I mean, between waivers, between rest of season rankings, which helps for content like this, trade, you'll see exactly where everybody is ranked for the rest of the year. So if a guy's ranked 20 spots spots ahead of another guy, you say, hey, I might try and target that guy. And then as you go through here, you'll have everything else from your rankings, projections, game-by-game matchup notes for every single player on the slate, detailed matchups for all 300 plus players. And the blueprint is very simple to get. You just scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description below to join the thousands of others who currently have access to it. And this is the best part. It's only going to cost you $5 for the entire season. For the entire season. So what, like a quarter a week or something along those lines? And if you don't make your fantasy playoffs, I'll just refund that $5 to you. You can check it out, link down below, or by scanning the QR code on the screen right now. So we go from Aaron Jones to another Packer, and it's Romeo Dobbs, who I do think is a sell for Green Bay right now, even after a strong week 1 performance. There's a lot of reasons for this, but week 1, he had a nice game. He had 5 targets, 18.6 fantasy points. Most of it, though, came on 2 touchdowns, but that's kind of his game. He's a nice red zone body. Now, he entered this week battling an injury, so he only played 47% of the snaps, but he was still out there on most of the passing plays. You can see right here, he ran 67% of the routes, and this includes a blowout late where he came off the field. But more importantly, he earned a target on 25% of his routes run. I mean, this is borderline elite numbers, meaning Jordan Love was looking his way often. But there's a few issues he's going to have moving forward. 1, Christian Watson didn't play and should return soon. And 2, the Packers ranked 3rd worst in neutral pass rate. That neutral pass rate stat is concerning because the Packers just want to run the ball nonstop. What Dillon and Jones, they don't want Jordan Love to throw more than 30 times if he doesn't have to. And this is going to lead to a situation of just much less receiving yards and overall targets to go around for guys like Romeo Dobbs, who are going to have to rely on these 1 to 2 touchdown performances to have big breakout weeks and be worth a spot in your lineup. There's a decent chance this is Romeo Dobbs' best game on the year, around 19 fantasy points, especially when Watson comes back, so try and sell him if you can. And consider getting rid of Miles Sanders, who, look, week 1, he actually saw a fantastic role. Between his rush attempts at 18 and his targets at 6, he saw 24 opportunities. Not a lot of guys in the NFL saw much more than that, and he put up about 12.8 fantasy points. But the concern was that's not that high of a fantasy point total, and he only averaged 4.4 yards per touch. Really bad. And believe it or not, he didn't get the 3-down workload that we were kind of promised all off season from Carolina. The other running back that was involved was Chuba Hubbard, who actually saw a nice snap count of 36%. Miles Sanders only saw 58% of the snaps. This wasn't like a 65 to 75%, but let's look at this if we scroll over here. The long down and distance work went to Chuba Hubbard. 83% of the time on a 3rd down and long of like 5 or more yards, it was Chuba Hubbard out there. He was actually out there on 100% of the 3rd and 10s or longer. And this means Sanders is going to see a lot less targets than we originally had projected for him. I mean, look at it this way. He earned 22 touches in this game and was barely enough to be a productive player in your lineup. And I don't think this offense, based off what we saw week 1, no real explosive pass catchers in the offense, a rookie quarterback, a shaky offensive line, I don't think they're going to be in the red zone a lot, meaning less touchdown opportunities. So leverage the fact that he had 12.8 fantasy points to try and trade him away before a tough matchup against the Saints in week 2. And also try and upgrade Darnell Mooney as soon as possible, meaning trading him for a guy a tier above him because he had a good week 1. And indeed, it was a good week 1. If you ended up starting him, he was probably on a lot of people's benches, but if you started him, he had 7 targets. This co-led the team with the rookie running back Roschon Johnson, and 15.3 fantasy points is very good. But I don't believe this is going to be consistent and sustainable production, and you shouldn't either because of this right here. DJ Moore is still on this team. He ran 46 routes week 1. It might have not seemed like he was out there, but he only earned 2 targets because he was facing maybe the best cornerback in the league in Jair Alexander, who was shutting him down. Simply put, I don't think DJ Moore is only going to earn a target on 4% of his routes run. I mean, for reference, even Chase Claypool had 6%. Tyler Scott had 20%. This is going to be closer to a 25% moving forward, meaning that's going to cut directly from Darnell Mooney. And the other issue is the fact that the Bears were a bottom 10 neutral pass rate team last year, and this continued week 1, meaning that in close games, they were running the ball nonstop. This shouldn't shock anybody when you have a mobile quarterback and they're using a platoon at the running back position. So Mooney, like he did last year, probably going to see closer to 4 to 5 targets per game and be a touchdown or bust player. Try and sell him off the week 1 performance. And consider selling this next RB. And that would be Alexander Madison, a guy that I was kind of indifferent on, didn't really like him, then was okay with, then didn't really like him again this offseason. And week 1, look, there's no doubt about it, he got elite usage. According to our official data partner, Fantasy Life, you can see Alexander Madison saw 73% of the running back snaps, and then he saw 69% of the rush attempts. When you factor in his targets, he had nearly 80% of the opportunities. Only like 2 other running backs did that last year. So this is pretty clear elite usage, but Madison just hasn't been efficient, and that's the concern. He ranked dead last in explosive runs last year and is outside the top 50 in yards per touch since 2020. And this inefficiency continued week 1, where he had 14 total touches with his rushes and his receptions, and it went for just 44 yards. That's 3.1 yards per touch. His week was saved by a short receiving touchdown. And if we head back to Hayden Wink's neutral pass rates, look at this. The Minnesota Vikings in week 1, like they were last year throwing a lot, they ranked number 2. Only the Steelers were higher, and when the game was close, they were passing the ball a ton, the Vikings, which obviously hurts the rushing chances and overall volume of Alexander Madison. Now, there is an argument that if they pass the ball more, maybe Madison can fall into these 5 or 4 reception games, but we just haven't seen it yet, and he hasn't been all that productive. So the role was surely strong week 1. So if you want to hold on to him, that's fine, but my concern is if he continues to be inefficient, which he has been for 2 years, Ty Chandler might start stealing some work. Now, the next player to try and sell is Garrett Wilson, and this one might seem like there's no way we're selling him because Aaron Rodgers is done for the season. Yes, I agree with you. It might be tough, but he was still a second-round pick. He was still good in week 1, even with Zach Wilson. Let's break it down. And by the way, a good salesman probably gets this one done. Let's talk through it. Garrett Wilson in week 1, he caught 100% of his passes. He had 100% catchable pass rate, so very accurate targets from his quarterback, Zach Wilson, and he put up over 14 fantasy points. And it's not like he's dealing with any strong competition. He earned 29% of the targets week 1 from Zach Wilson. The next closest guy in the team was Allen Lazard with 24%, but didn't do much with them after the catch. It's the Garrett Wilson show. So these are some of the things you can say to your league mates when you're trying to get a deal done, a package, or just try and trade for a guy, maybe like T. Higgins, who struggled week 1, because there's a pretty sad reality where last year in 9 games with Zach Wilson, Garrett Wilson averaged just 8.8 points compared to 8 games without him. Playing with Mike White and Joe Flacco, he averaged 17.3 points. So we don't want anything to do with Zach Wilson. You could also bring that up to your league mates saying, hey, with guys like Joe Flacco and Mike White, he averaged 17.3 points. Imagine if they just get a decent veteran, which is the concern. Because I'm not sure I want to rely on a decent veteran coming in mid-season without preseason reps or a ton of practice reps. And also, you can see here the Jets have been reaching out to the free agent veterans, but there's not a lot out there. Like, I'm not going to get excited about who? Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, no way. So let the dust settle a little bit and see if you can trade Garrett Wilson for a guy like Devonta Smith or T. Higgins, who might be the perfect trade target because he had 0 catches week 1 and people seem frustrated. And as we mentioned in the waiver wire video, Tyler Algier is somebody worth trading. And if you just added him off waivers, he's also a nice pickup and sell as soon as possible. Now, Algier was a top 5 running back over the final 4 games last year, and he continued this usage even with Bijan there week 1, where he had 18 touches, over 90 yards, and put up 24 fantasy points, was a top 5 running back this week. But it's important to point out that Drake London and Kyle Pitts combined for 2 catches. Both of those actually came from Kyle Pitts, and that's not going to happen every single week. And as the fantasy life data points out here, Bijan Robinson led this team in snaps, and he only had 10 rush attempts. Again, for the top 10 running back, who's one of the best prospects we've ever seen come out, odds are he's not going to see 10 carries and 5 less than Tyler Algier. Odds are this will be closer to 15 to 20 most weeks, cutting away from Tyler Algier. So try and trade him to somebody in your league who thinks he's like a top 25 running back or a top 20 running back, and see if you can get one of these guys who were struggling last week for him. So now these are the 12 players that you want to trade away. But if you want to see 12 guys that you should trade for, maybe trade some of these guys for those guys, well, check out this video right here. It's going to be a massive help for you. And if you made it to this point, double check that you have the subscribe button hit. It helps me as we try and push towards 100,000 subscribers, but it also helps you see my future content that's going to help you smack around your buddies.